there. I'm Gray Delisle Griffin, and I play Daphne on Scooby-Doo, and you are listening to a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
The gang's all here, they're on the case, and there's no ghost that they wouldn't face, 'cause they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, they dig it, Scooby-Doo.
Hey gang, and welcome to another episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo, the show that attempts to unravel 50 years of mysteries, meddling kids, and masked villains. My name is Mike Josick, and I'll be your guide through all things ghostly and groovy as I investigate every angle of every mystery and beyond. So grab yourself some Scooby snacks, fire up the mystery machine, and let's start the show.
Well, I'll be. You're the two that vanquished the ghost bear.
Undertaker. Scared, excited, same time, brain confused.
Skinny Man and Dead Meat, right?
Like, yeah. But you can call us Shaggy and Scooby. In fact, you can call us anything you like. But please don't call us to our final rest, Mr. Undertaker Phenom Dead Man, sir.
The bell tolls only for the demon. And you can just call me Taker.
Well gang, looks like we've got another interview on our hands. That's right, welcome everybody to episode 45 of the podcast, late though it may be. For anybody listening in the future, you probably won't be noticing this. For anybody who is kind of doing this all in real time, you may have noticed through my social media posts or just the fact that the podcast didn't come out at its regularly scheduled time. I had a couple of scheduling snafus with some guests. When the first one kind of fell through, I went to a backup, and then the backup fell through. I really gotta hand it to my guest for this episode, Ernie Altbacker, who kind of stepped in at the last minute and did a conversation in a short span of time. Ernie had actually always been on my hit list for people to talk to, has been for a while, and as it would turn out, this actually ended up being kind of fortuitous because Ernie just announced that there is a direct-to-video movie he has coming out based in the whole DC animated universe called Beware My Power, featuring Green Lantern John Stewart. And just a couple weeks ago, the Constantine House of Mystery DC Showcase collection just came out on home video, and Ernie's House of Mystery story is the lead short feature of that DC Showcase collection. So he actually had some stuff to promote. So he came in to do me a solid, and I'm hoping that maybe by talking about some of these projects, I'm also doing him a bit of a solid. And I'm actually a fan of the stuff that he's kind of worked on outside of Scooby-Doo. His only real contribution in the Scooby pantheon is the Scooby-Doo and the WWE Curse of the Speed Demon movie. But we do talk a bit about Ernie's early career in writing for animation, as well as some of the more current stuff that he's written, like Justice League Apocalypse War, which is pretty awesome, as well as the DC Showcase. I'm a huge fan of Hellblazer and John Constantine. Oh, I should also point out that most people at large will say John Constantine. It's kind of the American pronunciation. The character's originator, Alan Moore, actually said that the pronunciation is John Constantine, and he always intended it to be John Constantine when he created it. So I've been saying Constantine for years with very few exceptions, so I kind of maintain that throughout the conversation. So I will occasionally flip the script and say Constantine if it fits the context. I think I might do that once in the episode, but just to let you know, I'm not insane. This is actually, I do know the words that I'm speaking. It is not in error. If you're just here for the Scooby stuff, I will give you a bit of a cheat sheet. The conversation about the Curse of the Speed Demon starts somewhere around 14-15 minutes in, runs to about 40-ish minutes deep into the conversation. So if you just kind of want to like skip ahead and book it when we're done talking about Scooby, that's your prerogative. I would hope that you'd stick around for the whole conversation and maybe hear a little bit about what else Ernie is working on, but you got to do you. So It just managed to kind of split really cleanly time-wise, the way that the conversation kind of works in these like 3 parts. So figured I'd just throw out some time codes, and the rest is up to you. Anyway, as usual, I've gone on for a little bit longer than I usually plan to with these introductions. So I'm going to hop in the mystery machine and get my butt out of here and let all of you check out the conversation that I had with Scooby-Doo and the WWE Curse of the Speed Demon screenwriter, Ernie Altbacker. Enjoy the chat, and I will see you all on the other side. My guest today is a published author of 6 books and a screenwriter for animation and live-action television and film. He's contributed to a number of exceptionally cool projects over the course of his career, from the seminal John Semper Jr. Spider-Man series from the 90s to the Extreme Ghostbusters, Static Shock, the much lamented and highly underrated Green Lantern animated series, as well as the streaming Netflix show Legend Quest, and many, many others. In the direct-to-video world, he's worked on several films for WB Animation, including both Justice League Dark movies and the adaptations of fan-favorite comic book stories Batman Hush and Teen Titans The Judas Contract. For anyone who doesn't know, he currently has a short feature on store shelves right now with Constantine House of Mystery, which is the lead feature on the 4th, I think it's the 4th, DC Showcase collection. And it's just been announced that a new project, Green Lantern Beware My Power, featuring Green Lantern John Stewart and a host of other DC heroes, will be coming out this July, not too far off from when you might be hearing this episode for the first time. While I do want to talk a bit about those 2 projects, and we will, the main reason we're here today is to discuss the one contribution my guest has made in the ongoing legacy of Scooby-Doo, and that is for writing the screenplay to the direct-to-video film Scooby-Doo and WWE Curse of the Speed Demon. Please join me in welcoming writer Ernie Altbacker to the show. Thanks for coming on, Arnie.
Well, I got to give you most complete intro that I've ever had. Like, wow, that's some good research by you.
I'm here to please. So I want to talk a little bit about your background. And you went to school for screenwriting. So I was curious if screenwriting was something that you had kind of aspired to from an early age, or if it was something that you kind of discovered while doing your undergrad, or where did the writing drive come from for you?
Well, I mean, actually, I went to school for business, college, right? And then after college, I was at the family business, which is a pretty boring machine shop, right? So tool and die shop. And during that time, I'm like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't do something else. So I started writing. I wondered, well, maybe I'll write the great American novel. After a week, I was like, I don't want to do that. I love movies. Let me write a cool screenplay. And that's how I got into the American Film Institute. Was actually while I was working after college, but I didn't get to be if I could redo it, I'd be an English lit major or a communications major, something like that. That would be fun. I never got to do any of those.
Do you think it would have been easier had you gone the English route?
Yeah, well, especially the film school route, like film school in college, right? The AFI is a conservatory. Right? It doesn't have.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you're not a physics major in the AFI. It's just like that screenwriting. I would have loved to gone to college at UCLA or NYU for film school. And I think gives you a huge leg up because you've got an entire class of people there that are going to go into the industry. And if you're lucky, some of them become big and they give you jobs.
What were some of your early writing inspirations? Were you a big reader? Did you love comic books? Was it always around?
Yeah, I love fantasy, Tolkien stuff, and comic books. Just voracious reader of that type of stuff. Yeah, science fiction and fantasy were my main reading materials, and then I started collecting comic books at a young age, around 12 or 13, going to shows. I'd get introduced to other comics and stuff like that.
What were your comics of choice at the time?
First, I was a big Marvel fan, X-Men, drawing me in, the great John Byrne run. And then, I kind of switched over to DC. I had favorites from both sides: Flash, Wolverine, Batman, Avengers. So all over the place, I guess.
That was kind of my trajectory too. I was a huge Marvel guy. X-Men and Spider-Man were kind of my entry. And then in like grade 7 or 8, that's when Giffen and DeMatteis's Justice League was coming out, and it was post-crisis and DC's kind of reinventing. And I had a friend who was a huge DC guy, and he just kept shoving these DC books in my face. And I was reading Ostrander's Suicide Squad and the Justice League, and it was like a conversion experience.
Yeah, no, those were good.
So when and how did animation come onto your radar? Was that something that was like, were you keyed into it, or did the opportunity just come up?
Oh, I mean, what kid doesn't enjoy Saturday morning, cartoons? But when I got out of film school, everybody wants to write the big live action summer tent pole or whatever. At least I did. But the first job I got was John Semper hiring me on
I forgot you went to school with Jim Krieg, didn't you?
Exactly. So Jim got on first, and then he, for which I'll ever be thankful, he's like, all right, go in, try not to blow this. You're going to meet John Semper, and I was like, all right. And somehow I got it. So that was my first job. I couldn't believe it, because Spider-Man, the Ralph Bakshi Spider-Man of 67, 68 was one of my favorite things when I was 5 or 6 years old. I didn't see it live, reruns, right? But only by a little bit. And then I got to meet Stan Lee a couple times and work on his show. I mean, it was fantastic. And of course, loved the Spider-Man comic book, in the 80s. One of my favorites.
I heard Stan was pretty present for that 90s show.
Yes, he was.
So was Avi, wasn't he?
Yeah.
They were part of the whole story.
But you know what? I was only the last year. I was very happy. I was very happy to just get on before it shut down, but I was there for the last season. So I only saw them a couple times each. Whereas before, when they first started, they were included in the story meetings, and they just lasted hours and hours.
So how many episodes of that did you script?
Well, it's kind of different. I was on staff, right? And since I was just so new, I was rewriting people according to what John wanted, right? So I touched a bunch of scripts, but you don't take credit for that.
Right.
Usually, you leave it for the writer of record that got the assignment. And sometimes it's just very small. It's just fixing a scene or putting in oh, you know what? He needs this, the bar of power, because he needs to have it in the next episode, and the writer forgot to put it in this scene. So just write it and put it in, a little bit that he gets it at the end. Okay.
And then from there, you bumped over to Sony?
I think, yeah.
I think Extreme Ghostbusters is around, it's the same year or the next year from
that might
Spider-Man?
be the next credit. I was bumping around Saban also.
Okay.
Developing stuff, but I didn't get any Teenage Mutant Ninja credits or Power Ranger credits at that point. But yeah, no, that was just a freelancer that I co-wrote with Jim Krieg, that Extreme Ghostbusters episode.
Because you've got a few credits for Sony. You had there's a Heavy Gear on there, and Extreme Ghostbusters, and I think there was one more.
Heavy Gear. Yeah, Heavy Gear. I was a writer that was now in rotation, but still not on staff, but getting called again and again at that point. Where they give you multiple scripts as opposed to just one and done.
Your next big kind of move was to Warner Brothers, correct?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple other things that I think I remember. Popped down to preschool, again with John Semper when he was doing JJ to the Jet Plane, Mucha Lucha. I don't know who did that, Fox or something. That was with Krieg again. But yeah, somehow funny thing was I did a couple episodes of Static Shock for Alan Burnett, right? He was one of the main producers. Actually, when John Semper was doing it, right? So John Semper's doing this last season. And I think I wrote one and I got a story credit on another one or something, right? But Alan Burnett's like, these turned out well, I'm going to try and get you something else. And then and then nothing for like years. Like seriously, I think he just forgot. He just forgot me, whatever. And because he's got like, 50 writers pelting him a week for work, right? So I just got shunted aside. And then he started to get, he was in charge of these, what they call DTVs, direct to videos, right? The ones that are, you can download or you can get them on Blu-ray or DVD, right? And I'm like, oh man, how come? I'm like in front of him at Comic Cons and stuff, nice guy. He's not giving me anything. I'm like, what's going on? So finally I get a chance to pitch him a Justice League action after I did the Green Lantern, and I knew Green Lantern cold. So I took the story that was something called like Rage of the Red Lanterns. I knew all the characters and stuff. Right. And it came out like, well, like I really like that episode for an 11-minute thing. It's packed, right? and he was like, wow, you're really talented. I'm going to give you something else. And I go, well, are you going to wait like another 8 years? It's like, what? I'm like, you said that on Static Shock. He's like, oh crap, I forgot. So at that point, like he's like, no, you'll be on staff for this thing. So instead of that, though, I think right around there, they were doing this Scooby-Doo and WWE 2. Like the first one was pretty successful, so they're doing number 2. And I guess the original writer on it, he went off. He got a story editing job and popped off. Matt Wayne, right, who I've worked with before on other stuff. So Alan was like, can you do a rewrite on this thing? And I did that. And so that was my first long form that I got to do. So I was like really thankful. And it directly led to me getting Justice League Dark, which really kind of cemented me in this long form stuff and got me into superhero long form, which is, more drama. It can be rated R. And I kind of like doing that stuff.
It's something that interests me whenever I've talked to somebody who's kind of been a part of that system. I think a lot of people have the idea that essentially you're like, I have an idea for a Batman movie, or I have an idea for a Scooby-Doo movie, and you go and you pitch it. But there's like so many things sort of being developed and so many moving pieces just kind of bouncing around at any given time. And there's a stable of people who are working within that system. And it reminds me a little bit, I think of like old Hanna-Barbera, where when you're juggling so many IPs and projects and the staff there is movable. It's not just like, I pitch this, I write this, it goes to the director and the director makes it, and the animation, makes his crew and whatever. And like, I've heard people say that they've had Alan come to them and go like, hey, we've got this Scooby-Doo, or hey, we've got this whatever. And then it just sort of falls by the wayside and moves them to something else. And it's changed my perspective of sort of how that whole milieu, I guess, kind of worked. And what was your perspective kind of like being in the middle of it? is that kind of how it was? Or
for me, like some people that were involved in it more, I mean, I was a staff writer that came in like an employee for a year for the Green Lantern, but I wasn't popping around to other shows. There are some free floating people that do that, but I've never had that job. Mine is more of they call me, or I hear that they're accepting pitches on a certain thing, whether that's a Lego superhero show or, something that Jim Krieg is doing. He's like, I need pitches. I need 11-minute pitches starring Stargirl, Constantine, and Dr. Fate. We haven't done any stories with that. If you can think up some good stories. So come in and they, pitch them, maybe get one of those or something. So I'm a little bit farther outside on that, but that Alan was giving out assignments and stuff. Yeah, this happens all the time. Like he'll call people in that he thinks are good for a certain thing.
I figure if you're on a series, you're probably more kind of locked into the series. I got the sense it was more of the kind of specialty projects and the D2V projects and anthology stuff like Justice League Action.
Yeah. I'd say, you know what? Warner Brothers has experimented with a a floating person, but I don't think it's gone very far. Whereas Disney has that position, I hear, that they go and write 2 episodes on this and 1 episode on that, and they bob around. It's like however you need it. If you're the story editor, you're like, oh, we need someone quick. It's like, well, we got this person in here. But I'm not sure Warner Brothers has that position or had that position at that time. Maybe they do now. I don't know.
So you come on to Scooby-Doo. I guess let's jump into the Scooby-Doo. Matt Wayne has written the story for both the previous one and for this one. You're brought in. What is the brief? Is there enough of a story there that you just basically hit the ground on a first draft right away, or is there more development that has to be done?
There's a little more development, but pretty much the story was there. Yeah. And it was like one meeting and then go off and write. So wasn't a huge thing.
From talking to you prior to the record, there were some other characters that did not appear in the final film.
Well, that
initial pitch.
that wasn't in this, like we didn't know at this time. I mean, the lead but also in the script, everything was fine during the script stage. I handed in version where the lead was Hulk Hogan. And then there was this scandal and he wasn't the lead anymore. And then they got Rowdy Roddy Piper, which I was like psyched about because I knew wrestling, like I knew old time wrestling. I didn't know the new people, although seeing them record, when we get into that later, like the Miz and Paige, they're Sheamus, great, right? But they had, I mean, like it was going to be Rowdy Roddy Piper from They Live, and then he passed away before they could re-record the lines. And so that's when the Undertaker came on, but I was off the project at that point. I met all the other people, but I did not meet the Undertaker.
So you said you had previous experience with the wrestling side of it. What was your previous experience with Scooby? Were you a fan as a kid?
Oh yeah, that 60s show that there's only like whatever. How you would know? 16? Are there 18 episodes?
There's kind of 2 official seasons that make up something like 32 episodes, and then there's sort of a kind of 3rd season, which I think adds another 13 or 16.
No, that 60s one? I thought there was only like 14 or 16 with Space Kook and all of that Confederate general guy. Like those are the ones that you see in the original theme song, Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Where are you? Right? I thought that was one season of 18 episodes.
It might be 18. I think the 2nd season was 6.
Yeah, but when did that? Oh, okay.
So between 69 and 70, because the way the deals were back then, you had a first season commitment for whatever it was, like 13, 18, 20, whatever. And then a 2nd season commitment from the network was like 6 episodes. And what Joe Barbera figured out was if we just come up with a new show featuring the characters, we can get a commitment for another 16, 18, or 20 rather than a commitment for 6. So you've got a season of Josie and the Pussycats, and then you've got a season of Josie and the Pussycats in outer space. And you've got 2 seasons of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And then you've got the new Scooby-Doo movies.
I count the 18 episodes as Scooby-Doo classic. That's mine. That's the one that I like the most. So yeah, that I got to write like Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, and Thelma. I was like, yes. That was right up there with being hired on for Spider-Man, and getting to meet Stan Lee.
So you come on to Scooby, but it's not your typical Scooby.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's one of the crossovers. You got a lot of masters to serve, a lot of characters, and it's not a traditional mystery, although it kind of plays out. It kind of plays out.
It's a mini mystery.
Yeah. How was that experience? And how much, I mean, you're servicing the Scooby IP, when you're also servicing WWE, and I'm assuming WWE probably had some expectations or some requirements. I'm curious how it was kind of handling that and balancing that.
It was fun, actually. I mean, they got to read the script and they wanted to make sure that you could write the voice of the actors on the mic, basically how they sounded in the shows. So I guess I did a pretty good job on that. I mean, at one point, I mean, of course we can do spoilers here, right? I mean,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
At one point, one of the like false leads is that it might be Vince McMahon doing it, right? And so we had that he was actually practicing to sing the national anthem, right? Right. And so I put in this thing, right? And then I had him singing, and I had like singing poorly, just the last part, like land of the free, home of the brave. And then at the end, nailed it, right? and they go, he's never going to do that. He's just never going to do that. The WWE people are saying it. And I'm like, well, I don't know. The stuff I saw, he does a lot of crazy things. Maybe he'll go for it. And he ended up doing it, So I was like, man, this guy is awesome.
It seems like in both of the movies, it seemed like they were pretty game to really just kind of play.
Yeah. They were. Some of them were like, I think I'd give the most game award in this one to The Miz. I mean, like by a lot, actually. He was fine with doing anything for a laugh. It
was weird for me because I'm any wrestling that I'm really familiar with is like 80s wrestling. It's the big Hulkamania, Roddy Piper,
right,
Andre the Giant stuff. I also am. I know some of the characters, some of the personalities, but I don't really know the storylines or who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. And so going into both films, I was sort of like not really sure how I was going to engage with it because it's dealing with characters that I'm mostly unfamiliar with. But this was really, really easy to get into, and the voices of the wrestlers as well as the gang. I mean, you nailed the gang as well. It was really accessible. It was super accessible, and I enjoyed it and enjoyed the jokes. And I mean, it's not going to drive me to, go into a deep dive on WWE, but it was a fun, whatever it was, 72 or 80 minutes, and probably revisit it again sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I didn't know any of these guys, and I was disappointed because John Cena wasn't in this one, right? So I had to watch the first one before I did the second one. So I'm not sure. I think some of the other wrestlers are in it, but then I had to watch a bunch of wrestling because Brandon Vietti is a huge wrestling fan. He's like the supervising producer. He's a giant wrestling, and like, you got to start watching Friday night WWE SmackDown to like get involved in the plot lines. I'm like, really? Do I? And but I did. I started watching it, and I'm like, man, this is kind of interesting. These guys put on a good show, because I hadn't watched it. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my uncles from Hungary, they would love the wrestling. I'm talking like Haystacks Calhoun and stuff like that, Superfly Snuka. Yeah, and so I got in that too. Randy, the Macho Man, and Roddy Piper and stuff like that. But then it kind of ended, like when I went out to college, I knew none of the 90s, what happened in 2000. So these are all new to me, but I loved some of these characters like Sheamus and Paige, Kofi Kingston was great. And then the only thing from the oldie days that remained in the movie, got to do a couple of lines, was Dusty Rhodes. I totally remember watching Dusty Rhodes when I was a kid.
I was kind of curious because the cast does change somewhat from the first film. And I wondered if that was on the WWE side wanting to just sort of give more of their characters or personalities.
Other people the spotlight.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how hard was it, again, not being a huge contemporary wrestling fan, how hard was it to get those voices too? Because I'm assuming like you're handing in the script and they're, like you said, they're approving the words that you're writing on the page.
Yeah, and then the actors, some of them come in, some of them do it remotely, but a lot of times they'll go, oh, can I say it this way? Can I say this line this way? And as long as they get the bit in about that demon, that speed demon racer, right, they can get into it as however they're more natural, and they love ad-libbing because these guys are performers. So
Yeah.
a lot of stuff came from them.
I wondered about that too, like how much of the page is actually on the screen, considering, they created those characters and you're just interpreting them. So
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't tell you. It's been a little bit of time. I think I know they filmed the entire thing and then it gets edited, but I think this was one of those, because of the lead changes, that they fit everything in, and they used a lot of the ad libs also. But yeah, it was a little. You have to work in the WWE adventure into a Scooby-Doo mystery frame, if that makes sense. Like the WWE adventure, and okay, this was right off while we were doing it. I'm sorry, now I'm remembering a little bit more. For this movie, the WWE said, you know what, we'd rather not have it be around wrestling. Have it be something else. So Warner Brothers is like, you're the WWE, you don't want to run. It's like, no. And then I think Matt came up with the idea of like, well, how about this car race? Like, it's like an extreme car race where they wrestle each other on the roof, stuff like that. And there'll be a speed demon. And so all that got approved. But then it goes to like BS&P, and anything that might be imitatable is not good for a kid, right? Because they don't want like an 8-year-old to go, oh, let's see something that like, the Miz and Goldust did in the movie by standing on a moving car and wrestling each other and throwing each other off. How cool would that be? I mean, I don't know sometimes how the Broadcast Standards Practices Board, like how dumb they think kids are, but let's err on the side of safety. So we had to think up stuff like, it's magnetic shoes. So you can't do it. Don't imitate it unless you have these super magnetic shoes, right? And a safety line, right?
I wondered right at the end when Undertaker does his finale pile driver, he jumps in the air and then it cuts to like a reaction from Scooby and Shaggy. And you don't actually see Undertaker and Demon hit the ground. You see kind of like the aftermath. And I was like, I wonder if that was a BS&P note.
I bet you, I could easily see that.
Did you find any of the characters, either part of the gang or the WWE crew, were any of them difficult to write for?
Well, there's so much. It was more difficult for me to write the wrestlers than it was the Scooby Gang, because I have so many years experience of listening to the Scooby Gang. You can just hear.
They're in all our DNA by now.
Yeah, you can hear Shaggy going zoinks. You know, like all of their catchphrases. Velma says jinkies. Like Daphne doesn't usually say that, right? So Frank Welker's been doing like Fred the entire run of Scooby-Doo from the first season. So I'm not going to out Fred him. If he says, I'd rather say it this way, you go, fine, do it your way, but having watched a zillion episodes of Scooby-Doo, you kind of know what he's going to say and what he's not going to say, and his overall like optimistic tone of the cravat wearing hero sleuther that he is, and the other guys, the other ladies and part gang fall into similar pockets where you can just reach into the memory banks and go, that doesn't sound like them.
It felt like they were having fun with the words, and you can kind of tell. I mean, Fred was just kind of like on a different level, and Shaggy and Scooby seemed to be kind of clicking, and I was enjoying sort of the Velma Daphne stuff, and none of it was like too overt. It was kind of nuanced, and I mean, some of that obviously is from the voice actors, but some of that is obviously on your end. So just wanted to give you a high five for nailing that.
I remember there was like a bunch of lines were cut in the recording script, right? Not that, I mean, they told me to cut some, and then they cut some others for the animatic. It was like too long or something. And I think I made Shaggy laugh like 4 times in a row without a line, nothing, just like he had to do, oh yeah, oh, just laugh. And like the fourth time, Matthew Lillard just looks at me like, dude, what? You know, that's not me. That wasn't me. It was my fault. Totally.
You mentioned time, and it occurred to me, like, the format for these D2Vs, they all tend to be between like 70 and 80 minutes long. What is the driving purpose behind that? Is it completely budgetary? Is it?
I will tell you, 72 minutes is usually what they do, and they feel like they're giving you a movie's worth of stuff, a short movie. Animated movies are usually shorter anyway, right? They're 90 minutes because to animate everything costs an incredible amount of money, right? So they go 72 minutes. Now, depending upon the director, if I'm just speaking, it's only my lip flapping, that's not new animation, right? So at this point, we're paused in our 72 minutes. And if we were going and I was just talking, then it would become 73 minutes, okay? But you would have only spent 72 minutes of original animation. Get it? So anytime they're just two people talking and lip flaps, that's why they're not always just 72 minutes. The scan and pan part of it, when somebody's talking or there's voiceover as you swoop into the city or something, that's one panel. Moving the camera does not cost you extra animation. So I think Justice League Dark Apocalypse War ended up being 90 minutes because we kicked on people, or not me, James oversaw that to where when people were talking, that he could go back and forth to the people, but it's really just a head in a frame or two heads in a frame, tight shot like this. And that doesn't cost you more animation. That's like not the character is running from another character that's shooting at him in different backgrounds. That's all costing you your original animation type stuff, you know?
That's fascinating.
So yeah, and also it's not 72 minutes of totally original animation, but there's some sort of thing, you know, because obviously that would be an incredible amount of original animation where every frame would, like, we're taught to use the same locations. If you have a headquarters, you don't want to just use the headquarters one time and blow it up. You want to blow it up in the last scene, but having used it 3 or 4 times, because that's a background. They did all the props for it, and they got it.
It's just like I said on a TV show. It has to be designed. It has to be painted. It has to be all the stuff.
Exactly, right? So the more you can get those talking scenes interesting, the longer they will let them go on. If it seems like it's flagging and it's boring people, then they'll cut it and cut it and cut it short. But it has to be a minimum of 72 minutes, I think, for a lot of the stores and stuff to sell it as a feature. So they want to hit that mark all the time.
Yeah, I think 60 minutes is kind of considered the bottom level for feature length. Anything under that is like a short.
82, I've heard, for live action is like something that there are rules for, like the Oscars. Like a 65-minute live action feature does not count, you know, like it has to be like 82, I believe. And that's why they count credits. I mean, look, here's like a pro tip. If you see something that's really short, other than animated, if it's a live action movie and it's like 80 minutes, watch out. It could be bad. Because I guarantee you, it's about 73 minutes with a slow credit crawl. And they're like, oh, God, we screwed this up.
I know the credit trick well. The one digital short film that I made had some slow credits on it.
Well, sure, you can do whatever you want.
Pad out the length a little bit.
Could be a minute. Could be, I mean, Constantine, the House of Mystery is 26 minutes short. It's actually longer than most half hours of animation.
I very much want to talk about House of Mystery, but I got a couple more Scooby questions to run by you. Right. Was there anything in the script that you found like just really hard to break? Something you just kind of sweat over for a while?
Actually, the race course itself was, the first time I wrote it, someone made like a model of it and showed me that it wasn't actually possible. Like I called for turns in a certain sequence that it was like it's also, like one of those drawings with the stairs everywhere, right? It's like,
Yes.
so I had to redo it. The getting down the mountain and the timing for the ending thing gave me fits for a little bit. Yeah. So
did you have to actually kind of, at least in your head, kind of model out the track, or did you sketch it, or was there any?
I'm not a sketcher. I just like, it's in my head.
Okay.
I mean, like I knew it was like a big thing. And then I don't know if it was a note or I think maybe I figured it out that there was a snack that was the same, like
The pretzel, yeah. The Dead Man's
Right?
Curve pretzel, yeah.
The Dead Man's Curve pretzel, right? And I was like, well, this is perfect that we get Shaggy and Scooby to drive down, after something happens, because they're the stars, right? And it's really hard because a lot of times they just laugh and eat. I mean, Velma's the one that's the sleuth, I mean, and Daphne and Fred setting his traps. Daphne's looking pretty and also helping with both sets of things,
I like the payoff of that pretzel, because when they give Shaggy the wheel and the Undertaker's like, you got to drive because you're part of the team, and he's like drive like you've never driven before, and he's like, I haven't. And then they have to do the big Dead Man's Curve, and then I believe it's Velma who says, hey, you've been eating this pretzel like the whole time that we're here, you should know this. And they go into that kind of fugue state where they just know what all the turns were, and I was kind of like, clever.
I don't know if it's still in there or something, but I remember a line something like, do you guys know the chorus? And the answer is, better, we've eaten it.
He does say we know the course like the back of our stomachs.
Oh, okay. All right. That might have been that.
So that's in there.
Who knows?
Did you watch any wacky races to prep for this?
I love the wacky races. I had enough general knowledge of the wacky races that I did not have to watch them. But yeah, I remembered that.
My last official question on Speed Demon. There was a reference to, what was it? Shark Racers made by one of the characters. And I wondered, considering your book series, The Shark Wars, if there was some sort of connective tissue there.
I don't remember the line. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah, Shark Racers. I don't know if it was at the same time. Might have been. It was after my books. But sharks are just like, I don't know. That was an example of the guy's other reality show, right? Shark Racers or something like that.
He was like, next year we should have sharks.
Exactly right. The guy who does the Shark Racers thing. Okay. I'm not sure if that was the best joke in there, but
Jumping from Scooby, you've spent quite a bit of time with the DC heroes. And I was actually just talking to Heath Corson, who was on a very similar trajectory. He worked on a Lego Scooby-Doo, and then I think it was Alan that moved him on to doing Justice League War or Flashpoint or something like that. Is like Scooby the training ground? And then you get your training wheels taken off and head into the DC heroes?
No, they really like Scooby there. That is not everybody gets to do a Scooby. That's for sure. It's a beloved project there. They keep rebooting it because people love it so. I'd say it's slightly more prestigious than doing the comedies, but I think Alan Burnett was doing it at a time where he was handling both the comedy stuff and the superhero stuff, right? So if you have, from my story editing experience on regular shows, and it probably levels up to this, when you get a writer that turns the stuff in on time and it's usable and no one complains about it, use that writer again. Like that's the dream. The dream is you don't have to rewrite it that much.
Right.
That's the guy in charge.
So was moving to the DC heroes, was it exciting to move into the DC heroes? I suppose that's probably the best way to.
Oh yeah, that was my dream area of animation, actually.
And you jumped in with Justice League Dark, right?
Yeah.
Were those characters you knew?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that
I loved Constantine. Hellblazer was my favorite comic at the time. I kind of discovered it while I was over there for the Green Lantern, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I mean, I knew the character Constantine, but I just hadn't read a lot of him. And at that point, I was like, this is my favorite guy. And so when I got to do Justice League Dark and it starred Constantine and Batman, I was like, yes. You know, like a lot of people are like, it's just a cash grab. And it is, because Batman's the best selling thing along with the Justice Leagues of these, right? So, I mean, it's like ensuring its success so you get another one, right? And another, and then finally Constantine becomes his own guy. But I never was bothered by the mashup, the team up, because I think it's great. World's best magical detective, world's greatest detective, together, you know? And of course, Constantine would annoy the crap out of Batman. And that's some good humor to leaven the horror that we have in there.
It was something I honestly went into with trepidation, because I also was like, oh, of course, Batman's in this. And I was hardcore Hellblazer fan, the Vertigo stuff. And I really loved that kind of mystical side of the DCU. And I'm like, okay, so how's this going to blend with the kind of iteration of the DC universe that the animated films were all kind of depicting? And I've read some Justice League Dark, so I kind of knew what the tone was sort of going to be like. But you just never know what the movie's going to turn out like. And you had Batman in it, but he didn't overpower it. He was there almost as like
he wasn't the lead.
No, he was kind of the, you always have that audience character who's there to sort of witness this world, this fantastical whatever. And he was kind of that guy, which was kind of neat. And it plays out mostly like you kind of expect a Justice League Dark movie to play out. And actually, you guys had Jeremy Davies playing, what's his name? Richie.
Oh yeah, Jeremy Davies. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic, because he played Richie on the show.
Did he?
Yeah.
I remembered him from Justified. I was like, how are we getting this guy? He's great.
Yeah, he played Richie on the David Goyer Constantine show that was on NBC.
Right. I love that show too.
He's so great.
It was just unfairly taken away from us. But when I heard that Matt Ryan was going to be on it, then I sought out the show. I was already watching it. I think it was like 6 episodes in. So, I just started writing, like aping how he did Constantine. Right.
You didn't have Matt Ryan for the first movie though, right?
No, he's there. Yeah.
He is there? Okay. I thought it was Robin Atkin Downs or somebody.
No, it's Matt Ryan.
Okay.
He's been Constantine in all of those movies.
So I knew he was in Apocalypse War.
So that was the other thing. So after Scooby, right, where person leaves, right, and then Alan was like, okay, you can go back to Justice League Action, because I had 2 like stories approved and stuff. But then he goes, but I got this Justice League Dark, right? That needs something. And apparently, so J.M. DeMatteis, great writer, great comic book writer, he had to leave to go do something awesome. And so there was some outline for the story, right? There was some treatment. So I had to go in and basically take over on that one. And I think we're both credited together with the story, but then I went off and wrote the script off of that. But his part is the beginning. That's where all the really horrible stuff happens, He did that really well, story-wise. I had to execute it.
Right.
It's fun working with him. Another person, like you say, it's like I was reading his comic books in the 80s. Like,
oh, yeah. And he's the first writer on Justice League Dark, too. He launched that title.
I know.
So very apropos. With Apocalypse War is kind of an interesting thing in that it was the next thing on the schedule was a Justice League Dark movie, but then Warner Brothers also decides that they want to shut down that iteration of the kind of new 52 characters and relaunch it to something else. And I know there was like kind of some weird juggling stuff going on behind the scenes. Were you there? Were you the first writer there?
No, that was another one where Margaret Scott, a very talented writer, was on there, and she had done a draft actually, and then she got called away to do some other project. We bounce around a lot, us writers, right? To be a story editor somewhere, something like that. Then they changed it they changed it, so I had to do this big rewrite. The lead of hers was Superman, and they're like, well, now it has to be Justice League Dark, and it has to have a bunch of those characters, and Constantine's got to be the lead, right? So it had Constantine in it, her script, but not as the lead. So I had to like refocus, and it's a big rewrite because if you change who the lead is, naturally every scene, even if it's kind of the same, has a totally different execution, you know? Plus I had to put in more Justice League Dark stuff. So Etrigan wasn't in that script. I put in more Suicide Squad or swapped out some, like Captain Boomerang wasn't there, but I really liked him from Alan Burnett's Hell to Pay. And I thought, oh, this is a fun character right here. And I can make him grind against Constantine because he's Australian. Constantine's English. They don't like each other sometimes, but the actors were very game to do it. Yeah, so there you go.
I kind of love the fact that essentially the way that story ends is Constantine tells Flash, hey, let's do a reboot, and sends him off on a run. So it restarts everything, giving everybody another chance. Yeah, and then that's when we get Superman, Man of Tomorrow, which was the next film. But you get a chance to go back and write the character again as kind of a coda to the movie in House of Mystery. And I was wondering, did you feel like there were some threads that you wanted tied at the time, or was this brought to you and then you were like, well, what can I do here?
No, it was unplanned. DC came out with, they're going to do another grouping of shorts, right? So they need like the anchor short, the main short, right? Like I think Death in the Family was, and Superman Shazam was in the first. There's three.
There's always a new one, and then there's like three that appeared on other.
Three that appeared in
videos.
The DTVs as extra bonus things, right? Like a 12 or a 14 minute or a 16 minute or something like that. And so Jim Krieg, and they decide who are the minor characters or books. They did a Weird War, right? In the previous one. Like what kind of books do they want to, shine a light on, or what kind of character? And so one of them was, let's do a House of Mystery. And of course, like somebody's got to be in the House of Mystery. So he wanted to do a Constantine. And so he called me because he likes the way I write Constantine. But he also had some other ideas. He was like, you know what? I can use this. We can use this as a coda of like how Constantine got punished for screwing with the timeline. I'm like, great, right? And then I guess that week or the week before or something like that, Doctor Who was on, and it was Heaven Sent, where he keeps being killed. Capaldi keeps being killed in the castle, and he's got to punch through a like diamond wall, and it takes him 1,000,000 years or millions of years. And so basically it's Groundhog Day with death, right? And we were like, well, that's kind of a neat idea. What if that was like the main driver of the story? So bloop, that goes into the story stew. And then we knew we wanted to do it like a Twilight Zone, to where the ending was like maybe just opening the door and the person screams, but you cut away. So you don't know what happened, but through the story, like, oh, something bad happened to that person, So all of those go into the kind of story stew. And then the writer has to make it look like, oh, we were planning all that from the get-go,
It's always best when you can come back to something and everybody just thinks that you've had that germ in your head the whole time. You've just been waiting to get it out.
We did not.
It was so great because it was like this interesting blend of, this is more on the art end than the script writing end, but they had the Phil Barassa character model, and then they had a brand new character model, which I loved. And they really played with, I hate using the word multiverse now because of everything that's been going on with multiversal stuff, but all the different versions of Constantine and your Spectre. Really dug your Spectre. I really loved how you used it.
Well, in the beginning, I think when we were in a room or something, and we knew we needed a godlike character, right? So it was like, got down to between Dr. Fate and Spectre. And I don't think any of us had done the Spectre before.
Spectre was a better choice.
It probably. And plus Dr. Fate's like all over the place now,
He also doesn't, Spectre's on a level beyond Dr. Fate. Dr.
think
Fate's part
so.
of the whole chaos and order thing, and like Spectre's a little more universal.
Dr.
And
Fate like kind of serves somebody, whereas Spectre doesn't serve anybody. So
yeah,
too.
yeah. That's
We had a
cool.
couple more names of even more esoteric things, and I was like, man, if I never heard of him, I don't know if we should use it. I'm not in the super, but I'm definitely above average comic knowledge, right? So it's like, if I haven't heard of it, I'm not sure.
I thought for a second that Neil Gaiman's death could potentially be used in that role, but I know that there's permissions that you have to get, and I think everybody was lucky that.
I don't know. I think they might that they were able to do a death means that they have some rights. And I think there might be some plans to do something, but I'm not privy to those. Yeah, I don't know. Boy, this is above my pay grade.
Yeah. So at the end of the House of Mystery, you kind of leave it open again. You didn't have a plan previously. You're back again. Are there threads in your head, or is that just it's kind of open-ish, and who knows?
Well, that is one of those, look, I will say that this should be canon with the 16 episodes, because there's footage directly taken, from the Apocalypse War of them on the shore and stuff.
Yeah.
Running. It's like, that was from that movie. But it's meant to stand alone. Even if you hadn't watched any of the movies, you should be able to watch this Twilight Zone episode where suddenly you're in the middle of something and you're like wondering what's happening, and you get some answers, and it's a satisfying, if spooky, ending, right? On another level, it works as a coda to the 16 episode continuity. And on a third level, sometimes if you leave things a little bit open, even though it's a fine Twilight Zone ending, could something be built? Could something come back? Maybe. But, again, that would be in the planning stages for now.
So nothing in your head.
I cannot confirm or deny
Okay.
anything else happening.
Fair enough. So since we're talking about things you can't really talk about, let's touch on Beware My Power.
There you go.
Which is the new direct-to-video movie coming out from the new DC timeline, featuring Green Lantern John Stewart. I believe Green Arrow is in it. And there's like
this for a thing called Scooby-Doo cast, you really go far afield.
Well, I couldn't help. I mean, House of Mystery literally came out like a couple weeks ago, and Beware My Power is coming out in a month and a bit.
July, I want to say July 26th or something.
Okay, so this is kind of falling in a bit of a sweet spot where
it's listed on the internet. That is not a spoiler. It's listed in the thing.
I enjoy your stuff, and you only had the one Scooby movie, so I'm happy to talk about the other stuff.
I'd like to do another like Scooby, or maybe a Lego Scooby. I did Nexo Nights for Lego. I'd like to do maybe another one of those, something different. I like a superhero Lego movie would be kind of fun. But right now I'm on this little Prince of Darkness run here, where it's like I did, Justice League Dark, obviously, but even Teen Titans, the Judas Contract. I mean, that's a comic run where what happens at the end, like Terra dies in like a big operatic death scene, right? Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, people were like, okay, that's a lot of death. Right? And while I was doing that, or while that was coming out and all those reviews were coming in, I was thinking, hold my beer. Because I was writing Injustice, in which we kill a pregnant Lois Lane and blow up Metropolis in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And then I knew Constantine, the slasher movie, the House of Mystery slasher movie, where we kill him 2 or 3 dozen times, was going to come out after that. So I don't know if anybody goes, yeah, Ernie Altbacker, something light. Well, maybe a Lego superhero, or My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. He'd be good for that. But I have written that stuff too.
This is where you got to jump back to the preschool stuff.
I know, man. Come on, look at JJ the Jet Plane, man. I wrote little songs and stuff.
I can't remember what my question was. We were talking Beware My Power.
What? Okay, what? So what is, yeah, so
Coming out in July, Green Lantern John Stewart, part of the new timeline.
written with John Semper Jr.
That's correct, right. Reuniting the two of you.
Yeah, he gave me my first job on Spider-Man. So this is the co-write. This was a straight co-write. I did not come in after it. We wrote this together with Jim Krieg. I mean, Jim Krieg as the overseer.
Yeah.
The overseer.
Is there anything you can tell us about the film or the experience of writing with John?
Oh, the experience of writing with John is awesome. And I've loved it since my first job. It's still one of my top 3 or 4 jobs I've ever had, because he would only get us in the office for Spider-Man twice a week, at which point he would buy us lunch and we would talk about what Doc Ock would say to the Rhino, because Doc Ock's very learned. The Rhino's kind of dumb, so you gotta get the conversation right. It was like the best, right? So writing with John, still fantastic. We did mostly over the phone because there was COVID and stuff. I can tell you that Aldous Hodge, who plays the Green Lantern, is fantastic in it. And there's a bunch of other great cast. You know, I think Jimmy Simpson does the Green Arrow, and Brian Bloom is Adam Strange. Oh, and Jamie Gray Hyder is Hawkgirl, Shayera. I mean, like, they're really good. And the animation is great. This is a Butch Lukic, you know, in his universe. And it is directed by Jeff Wamester, who I've never worked with. But boy, that trailer looks good.
Having been somebody who worked in the previous, I guess, James Tucker-led iteration, having ended that iteration, now you're working in sort of the new timeline, the new direction. How are you finding, does it feel familiar? Does it feel different? I mean, they're all still DC characters, but
yeah, it's a little bit different. Butch is going to put his stamp on it, and he's got his people, you know. But I mean, it's pretty cool. I've had fun writing pieces of it, right? I think questions will be answered soon when Green Lantern comes out.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too long of a wait. So
yeah,
you mentioned being happy to return to Scooby-Doo. Do you think that could be in your future? Are you going to throw your name in the hat?
I don't know. I mean, like, I would definitely throw my name in the hat, but they got some wonderful people working on that stuff right now. So
I suppose all that stuff is kind of like, you all run like 2 years ahead of the actual release date. So
exactly. So
there's already people working on it right now.
Yeah, there will not. If I do get back to it, in 3 years it'll come out. So you'll know. But I haven't done one. So
we've seen Heath Corson, Jeremy Adams, and Tim Sheridan all move from the DC animated stuff to working on monthly DC comic books at one point or another. I know Jeremy's got Flash right now. I'm not sure if Tim has still got something going. Is that an ambition? Is that something you could see yourself doing?
Yeah, I really want to. And I just, you know, every time I start talking with a person, it seems like they move on to some other thing, you know. So I might be like the Reaper of
always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Yeah, you know, like I've got some stories that I definitely want to tell on a 5 or 6 issue miniseries type thing, you know, like. But that would be fun. I would like to do comics.
What are some characters that you'd like to hit up?
I have this awesome idea for a Constantine miniseries, like a 5 or 6 episode thing, and then I have another one for a Guy Gardner Green Lantern that I'm just dying to tell the story for. Again, it's like 4 or 5 episodes, something like that. But I like Nightwing.
Nice.
I like Suicide Squad.
Hey, if Paul Dano can write a Riddler miniseries, someone's got to get you on.
Paul Dano's great, though, you know. So
he's from totally outside, though. I mean, he's an actor, yeah, but
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully someone will hear your podcast and give me a call.
I'm rooting for you. I want to see it.
All right.
Anything else you want to let listeners know about? Anything in the pipeline? Anything coming out that you want to throw some early advance warning?
Oh, I can't.
Okay.
That if it's a Warner project, you can't. And then there's other stuff that's just gelling that might never come out. So I don't want to say anything and then look like, oh, what happened to that? It never came out. So we'll see.
All right.
I'm excited about a couple things, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. And if people online want to pest you with the questions you want to answer for me, where can they find you?
Oh, I'm at Ernie Altbacker on Twitter. And I think also Ernie Altbacker on Facebook. So you can probably find me there. And I got an Instagram too. Guess what it is? It's Ernie Altbacker.
Excellent. I encourage everybody to go check those out. I encourage everybody to go check out House of Mystery. It's highly entertaining. And the other shorts are also entertaining. I mean, you get a crazy 1960s Blue Beetle done in kind of the old Bakshi Spider-Man style, goofy sound effects. And Beware My Power coming out probably end of July. Thank you, Ernie, so much for joining me on the show and talking about this stuff. It's been great hearing your stories.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me, and have a great night.
And there you have it. That concludes my conversation with Scooby-Doo and WWE Curse of the Speed Demon screenwriter, Ernie Altbacker. If you stuck it out right to the end, I, and I'm sure Ernie, would like to thank you for sticking with it and listening to us chatting about other stuff that Ernie has either done in the past or in the pipeline. And like I did in the conversation, I want to urge anybody who's interested in DC Comics, superheroes, or animation to go and check out, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War was really something. It concluded this 16-chapter movie epic that the great James Tucker was tasked to execute and create this corner of the DC universe that he was made custodian of. And Ernie's DC showcase stuff is really fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with this Beware My Power movie, which is coming out at the end of July, co-written with his old mentor, John Semper Jr., which is so cool that literally his first job to his most current job, like it all just comes full circle. All my Scooby peeps are probably going to be out in force to get the Scooby-Doo and Guess Who Season 2 at the end of June, so you'll have some time to watch all of those, and then you'll be looking for something new to check out, and why not some Green Lantern action? Check out Ernie's social media. I think he's most active on Twitter. And if you want to stay abreast of what's going on with the podcast, much like what happened at the beginning of this month, check out the show's social media at Scooby-Doocast on Twitter. We're on Facebook and Instagram as a podcast named Scooby-Doo. There's also the scoobydoocast.wordpress.com blog that you can check out. There's some content there. And wherever you are listening, downloading, streaming the show, if there's an option to rate, review, subscribe, or follow, please do so. It helps get the show noticed with the algorithms and putting the podcast out there into the eyes and ears of people who may really enjoy this content. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank you for downloading and listening to this episode and all the episodes previous, whether you're a listener new or old. I really appreciate the support. As for the next episode, I do have somebody lined up. I wanted to say who it was, but I'm feeling a little gun shy considering what happened the last time. So I'm just going to kind of keep it close to the chest this time, and I'll keep people abreast of what's going on social media. So watch that to find out who the next guest will be. And with that, I will take my leave of everybody here. Hope you are staying safe, staying healthy. Thanks again for checking the show out, and we will catch you next time on a podcast named Scooby-Doo. Take care.
Everybody cheer! This is how we solve the mystery. This is how we solve the mystery. So in summation, this narration's my donation to the art of mystery solving dictation. And here's what the bad guys say when they play where the law forbids.
Would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
This is how we solve the mystery. Bye.